In 2017, in the midst of a booming economy, tech giant Amazon decided that they needed to add a second headquarters elsewhere in the country from their Seattle-based home. And in the first couple of months that this was out, the only thing that the news could talk about was all of the incentives that many of the cities across the country, especially in prominent areas, were putting out there in order to try and draw Amazon in. In the end, Amazon decided to split their decision and put two new headquarters up, one deep in Virginia and one in New York City. From the outside, New York City looked like it was going to be the perfect location for a new headquarters for Amazon. There was already a massively successful fulfillment center in the city of New York, and the fulfillment center also offered a lot of premium services that were location based, given the fact that there was a lot of population there and a lot of people like to buy from Amazon. And of course, New York City, being one of the largest cities in the world, had plenty of people out there to fill the 25,000 high-paying jobs that the new headquarters promised, in part of the deal that was reached with the governor and the mayor of the city in order to try and entice Amazon in. Cuomo and de Blasio were both on record as being very eager to try and get Amazon into the city. Of course, I'm sure both men wanted to take advantage of much of the income tax revenue coming from the workers, in spite of the fact that there wasn't going to be much, if any, income tax coming from Amazon itself. But I'm sure that both men also felt that they would look like heroes if they were able to come together and offer a plan that would offer 25,000 new jobs to a city that's in desperate need of putting more people to work. However, instantly, as soon as the tech giant announced that they were going to come into the city and start putting people to work, starting with construction workers, of course, but ultimately extending into the employees who were going to work in the headquarters, there was a stark opposition coming from various government officials and a small handful of citizens and constituency themselves. Progressives at all levels of the government were putting up opposition to the plans to have the tech giant come into the city for various reasons, many of them citing working conditions and many others citing the fact that Amazon was against unionization for the workers that were coming in. Not surprisingly, the biggest part of the opposition that was driving Amazon out of the city was led by everybody's favorite New York socialist, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. After Amazon decided that they were going to ultimately pull out of their plans to put their new headquarters in the city, Cortez tweeted this out. Replying to J. David Goodman, who was announcing the fact that Amazon canceled their plans to come to the city, Cortez tweets out, "Anything is possible. Today was the day a group of dedicated, everyday New Yorkers and their neighbors defeated Amazon's corporate greed, its worker exploitation, and the power of the richest man in the world." Of course, Cortez has drawn stark criticism from across the country for her role in pushing a massive company out of New York City, and she of course had a response prepared on her Twitter for all of the people who were criticizing her for her decisions. In a thread, Cortez tweets out, "Come for me all you want, but my job is to make sure the people are protected in society. Somebody's got to look out for the people our system is leaving behind, especially now, when most of the wealth created is going to fewer people. Those left behind are the majority of Americans." For all of the criticism that Cortez has drawn for her role in shutting Amazon down in New York City, she is far from the one who put the final nail in the coffin for Amazon. According to the New York Times, State Senate Democrat selected Mike Giarnis from Queens to a state board that had the power to veto the plan. Giarnis was first in favor of the headquarters coming to the city and all the jobs that it would create, but after more consideration and possibly some influence from the outside, Giarnis changed his mind and put the veto to Amazon coming in, as opposed to both de Blasio and Cuomo. It's important to keep in mind the fact that there were a lot of polls that were performed on the people of New York City, and most of them showed favorable reactions from the people of the city to the tech giant coming in. Most of the people were looking to have the high-paying jobs that were coming with the headquarters, and these were not fulfillment center jobs. There was already a fulfillment center in Amazon, and that took care of the jobs that it seems that Cortez was worried about when she cited other fulfillment centers across the country. No, these were going to be high-paying jobs: clerical, administrative, programming, STEM, research. The high-end jobs, the high-paying jobs, the ones that were going to draw in a lot of tax revenue for both the city and the state. But in the face of government opposition, Amazon has decided not to put their headquarters in New York City at all. What they have chosen to do is continue to grow those 25,000 jobs, but they are going to distribute them throughout fulfillment centers across the country. In fact, there's no reason for Amazon to be centralized, but it was just something that they were trying to do to try and help out the good people of New York City. It's not difficult for me to look at this Amazon project and draw a lot of parallels to another project that has ultimately been mostly canceled at this point that's much closer and dearer to my heart and my home state, and that is the Foxconn project that has all but been scrapped in my home state of Wisconsin. When I read articles about the Amazon closure in New York City, I can't help but realize the fact that a lot of the players are the same between closing Amazon down in the city and closing down or at least reducing Foxconn to what it is going to be ultimately at this point right here in Wisconsin. The union, of course, is at the top of the list in both instances, and that's because both companies are historically non-union. Now, the Amazon headquarters would have most likely not have been a union workplace just based on the nature of what was going on in that building. Clerical, administrative, and STEM occupations are generally exempt from any sort of union influence. And Foxconn would have probably been teased by the union, but they are historically non-union. The people on the line would have been teased by the unions to try and form up and try and take advantage of the numbers that they had in there. But again, the STEM and the research and development in Foxconn would have been exempted from any sort of union influence as well. As fast as New York City progressives were in preventing Amazon's headquarters from coming to the 5 boroughs, Madison progressives as well were equally as quick and as eager to try and shut down the Foxconn project, and both of them cited the people at the top of the deals and what it would mean for the people if these people were allowed to go forward. From Cortez to Giannis and even up to de Blasio after he turned his back on Amazon when they decided that they weren't going to build in New York City, all of them decided that they were going to go after Jeff Bezos for being the wealthiest man in America because somehow he stole from his workers and the American people in order to get to the top. And Madison progressives would not allow a project that was spearheaded by Scott Walker to succeed in any fashion anywhere whatsoever, based on the fact that Walker is anti-union and anti-progressive as well, but also the fact of who he was and what he represented to the people of Wisconsin and the people of the country as well. And in both cases, neighborhoods that were in desperate need of jobs were turned away with almost no jobs. Amazon completely pulled out of its headquarter ambitions in New York City, leaving the 25,000 jobs that would have been created in the city and all of the other business ventures that would have come from the fact that there were 25,000 new jobs in the city, all empty and bare and wondering what their next step is. And while Foxconn is still a go in Wisconsin, it is heavily reduced at this point, mostly reducing itself to a research and development facility rather than a production and manufacturing facility. And many of the workers who are going to be working in the research and development are ultimately going to be coming from out of state and even out of country in instances, whereas there would have been a lot of people in Racine County who would have needed these jobs and would have benefited heavily from the fact that they had these new jobs. I understand in both instances that the companies that were coming in were being offered massive tax subsidies to bring their businesses there. And I understand the importance of that. If these areas were not offering the subsidies, there was another area out there that was chomping at the bit to try and offer a subsidy to bring these businesses in. I understand that entirely. I think a better plan obviously would be to bring the taxes down and make it friendlier for all businesses to come in, but I also understand the fact that bringing in a lot of jobs from a company offshore or from out of state can start to jumpstart the economy to the point where you can start to lower taxes, and it's not going to be as much of a hit to your budget as it would be if you just lower taxes all across the board instantly. There are some arguments that are coming about the federal tax cut that talk about that because we really didn't have any cut in federal spending. There are obviously states out there like Texas and New Hampshire that are much more business friendly across the board, with no state income tax and lower taxes in general, that would have made a much more obvious place for these companies to go into. But the fact that the states that were trying to host these companies were offering the subsidies was a way to try and get some of the tax revenue generated by the workers without blowing out the budget in the first year by just going out and slashing taxes across the board. When it all boils down, I'm in favor of more jobs and people being more self-sufficient and not so sufficient on the government. But after reading the Green New Deal and talking about it on this channel, I do understand the fact that that is not a part of the progressive agenda so much as they're not trying to even hide it anymore at this point. But for now it seems that the progressives won and the citizens that they claim to represent lost. So now we'll see what is the next logical step in the economies of both Manhattan and Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin. What did you think about Amazon going into New York City, and what do you think about states and municipalities offering subsidies to try and draw in some of the jobs in some of the big companies? I always welcome a thoughtful and positive discussion in the comments section below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at Ed's Blog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Thanks as always for listening to this show and supporting this channel. And remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Take care.